Honorable Senators, my name is Jeet-Kei Leung. I'm here on behalf of the BC Compassion Club Society. We are the nonprofit organization that has been operating Canada's oldest and largest medicinal cannabis dispensary since 1997. In the past 12 years, we have served over 5,500 members with serious or terminal illnesses. I'll also quickly mention that since our second year, we've been operating an adjoining wellness center, and that part of our nonprofit model has been to use the revenue from cannabis sales to create accessible and affordable natural health care for our members. Last year, we subsidized over 89% of the actual cost of providing over 2,500 treatments in our wellness center in 7 modalities, including acupuncture, clinical counseling, and holistic nutrition. We, our members, and many others are greatly concerned and alarmed about the impacts Bill C-15 will have on medicinal marijuana patients and the cultivators who supply them through compassion clubs. Earlier testimony in this committee's proceedings suggests that, indeed, cultivators of compassion clubs will be subject to Bill C-15's mandatory sentences. To quote the Senior Counsel for the Criminal Law Policy Section of the Department of Justice, Mr. Saint-Denis, when given the specific example of a cultivator caught growing 600 plants for a compassion club, he responded that it is a matter of illegal production. Already the law is being broken. Now, our existence predates the federal government's program by almost 5 years. We are proud to have collectively established and developed the services, standards, and procedures that other compassion clubs, including in the United States, have modeled themselves on. In fact, we feel the quality of the medicine we provide and the support and services around this provision greatly exceed those of the federal program. So I would like to take this opportunity to give the honorable senators of this committee a little window into how cultivation happens in the Compassion Club context and how this translates into a safe, high-quality supply of medicinal marijuana for our 5,000 members. We have 24 cultivators on contract who sign an agreement to provide exclusively to us. This is part of our due diligence process and helps us ensure that there are no connections to organized crime. They agree to possible site inspection. In order to ensure affordable medicine to our members, our cultivators agree to prices below market value. Each strain we carry is lab tested biannually for microbiological contaminants to ensure safety for those with compromised immune systems. 70% of our strains are organically grown, which is a more expensive growing method with a smaller yield than chemical processes. Even those which are not fully organic use only natural predators and natural pesticides. 1/3 of our cultivators have 10 or more years of experience in growing cannabis. Our most senior cultivator has 30 years of experience. The issue of expertise relates to the very important issue of strain diversity, of which Health Canada's program has none. While THC is acknowledged to be the most active ingredient in cannabis, THC on its own has many uncomfortable side effects, and it is clear that the ratios of the other cannabinoids, as well as other constituents of the plant, such as the terpenes and the flavonoids, play an important role in modulating therapeutic function and efficacy. Each strain presents a different formulation of the cannabinoid ratios that allows us to predict its general therapeutic effects and thus meet the range of symptoms and needs of our membership. Our cultivators provide our members choice among approximately 80 strains in total. Many became breeders in order to keep a particular strain strong and have been keeping unique strains alive. When you lose the cultivator of a strain, you risk losing the very strain genetics which they are the keepers of. Now, what are the impacts of losing a cultivator? And I'll use an actual example that happened several years ago, when one of our most experienced cultivators, let's call him Jim, had his facility shut down. Now, Jim was producing what we would call research quality product, 100% organic. He had mastered the use of natural predators and had also perfected a microbiological tea for powdery mildew, the #1 bane of most cultivators. Jim was also one of our most compassionate cultivators. He supplied 8 to 10 pounds of medicine to us every 2 months in over 8 strains at $500 to $600 below market value per pound. This permitted us to provide this research-grade medicine to our members at $7 a gram. Jim himself was disabled and had been using his proceeds to fund a camp for disabled children. Now, Jim is not alone in being motivated by knowing that he was helping the sick and ill. Many of our growers make donations of medicine, time, and money well above and beyond what our contract calls for. After he was busted, he stopped producing. He was afraid of going to prison. He was in his 50s, and he was afraid of losing his land. At the time, he was supplying over 50% of our indicas, the family of cannabis which has great medicinal and therapeutic value. That loss was transferred and felt by many patients for a long time until we could replace his contributions. Now, Jim's situation happened 4 years ago, well before talk of mandatory minimums for cannabis cultivation. There's plenty of talk now, however, and a real fear among our cultivators about how they will be impacted by this bill. Several of them have told us that they are thinking about getting out of supplying for us. Now, these are people with families afraid of going to prison. Many are property owners afraid of losing their homes, and we are deeply concerned that the loss of judicial discretion in the cases of Compassion Club cultivators will result not only in the traumatization of decent, compassionate people, but will have the subsequent devastating effects for the thousands of members who rely on them for their supply of medicinal cannabis that is an essential or valuable part of their treatment. Mandatory prison sentences for cannabis cultivation will seriously undermine the work of Compassion Clubs, which at this time we believe to be largely accepted and acknowledged by society as providing a valuable service. Maclean's nationwide poll in 2006 found 92% of Canadians approved of the medicinal use of marijuana. And while the pictures we get of Compassion Clubs are typically related to the marijuana itself, what is often easily overlooked are the value-added services we provide to the community. This comes in the form of advocacy and support in accessing social services, redistributing donations from many different sources, free events through the year that contribute to the sense of community and place among our members, as well as providing mental health services through counseling and the Wellness Center, and also palliative in caring for the many patients with terminal illnesses who become members. I've been proud to serve the BC Compassion Club for the past 7 years. Before I joined our communications department, I worked in frontline distribution for 5 years. During that time, I came to know many hundreds of members personally, and many of them shared their stories with me. Illness and disease strike across all social boundaries and all walks of life. In the struggle to survive and live with dignity, something heroic is called out of what seem like otherwise normal, average people. The number of people who have directly told me how cannabis was a key ingredient in their survival and their recovery is truly astounding. Many members shared stories about how they were able to use cannabis to reduce or wean their use of prescription medications, which they had found much more powerfully addictive with harmful side effects. Over and over, people would tell me about the difference cannabis made in their lives, in their ability to live with dignity. Now, since we started to publicly campaign against the dangers of this bill, we have spoken to many members as well as the public. Almost unanimously, they have urged us on to speak out. I have here a petition we initiated in the past 3 months. I submitted to this committee in the hopes that you will read it and hear the concerns expressed and shared by all who have signed it. It is all our hope that the senators of this committee can play an important role in averting some of the tragic consequences for the most vulnerable that will be a consequence of the inclusion of mandatory prison sentences for cannabis cultivation. I thank you for your attention and concern for this matter.